Bienvenidos a la segunda parte de la serie de videos Argumentación en las ciencias. Esta serie busca capturar los testimonios de distintos científicos sobre el papel de la argumentación en sus prácticas dentro de sus disciplinas. En esta ocasión, y teniendo en cuenta los modelos generales que existen en la literatura sobre qué son y cómo se comportan los argumentos científicos, modelos que tienen en su núcleo el de Toulmin, que pueden ver ahora en pantalla, vamos a oír a distintos profesionistas contarnos sobre el tipo de evidencia que se persigue capturar en sus disciplinas, las metodologías a través de las cuales se obtiene esta evidencia y la garantía que las mismas metodologías heredan a los argumentos científicos dentro de áreas específicas del conocimiento. Así como cómo caracterizamos una refutación y cómo es que las distintas presentaciones de la misma evidencia pueden tener o no un efecto distinto en la aceptación y o el rechazo de los argumentos. En el video de hoy, Juan Goodyear nos habla del papel de la argumentación en el desarrollo y aplicación de las ciencias de la computación en el sector privado. A lo largo de este video vamos a poder tener acceso a las claves de la argumentación y comunicación entre pares en contextos comerciales de las ciencias de la computación. Juan nos explicará cómo se recopila, presenta y acepta o rechaza la evidencia en su área de trabajo, dada la división de áreas de especialización, así como la asignación de tareas distintas a diferentes grupos de trabajo y la necesidad de colaboración. Juan también nos dará un ejemplo sobre cómo se selecciona la evidencia relevante para distintos propósitos de cooperación en escenarios de resolución de problemas. Y por último, nos ofrecerá algunas reflexiones con respecto a las formas en las que distintas presentaciones de la misma evidencia pueden tener efectos significativamente diferentes en la aceptación o rechazo de algunos argumentos.
Hello, my name is Juan Goodyear. I'm currently a production operations engineer and with 25 years of experience in the industry. I started my career working in depot repair, so sort of fixing all stuff that is broken hardware-wise for the first independent Apple specialist repair shop in the United States in the Twin Cities, in Minneapolis, St. Paul. From there, I worked on everything from printers, monitors, desktops, and laptops, and this helped develop a foundation shooting in a very logical method, because in order to fix hardware, it generally breaks in a very predictable manner. So once you learn a pattern and you start following steps, you can get to what's broken pretty quickly. So this seems trivial, but this added the foundation to everything that I do now in some ways, because thinking about how everything's going to happen in a space is important to growing and expanding at scale. So fixing a problem today isn't really the question that I have. It's fixing, where am I going to be next month, next year, and how we can maintain and grow without having impact to services. So as that happens, you develop strategies like that. So gathering information, communication are some of the key things that I found necessary to do that. So in thinking about that, one of the questions was how does what you studied relate to your current job? And for me, it really didn't. What I studied in college didn't relate to my current job. I gained the knowledge much more akin to an apprenticeship, where I had great mentors and people who were willing to share their industry knowledge and help me grow along. And one of the key things that I found is sharing information helps everybody become smarter quicker, because you have their failures, your failures, and your successes and their successes. And with that, you build quickly, and you have what they know and what you know, and then you know more. So sharing that information really makes everybody's job easier. And that's the important bit that I've found over the industry, is like, how can I make it consumable for people to jump to the next step without having to do a lot of the extra digging for that work. So in thinking about some of that, I thought a good example would be talking about a build or something that happened in the past that was a project that I had to work on. And so some of the things that I work on are scaling infrastructure, so power, cooling, networking, servers, automation, that sort of thing. This example serves around a server room. Was working somewhere where we had a server room of a certain size that wasn't able to deliver consistent power, wasn't able to deliver enough cooling, and we had no room to grow. So the easy answer is, okay, we just need a new server room. That's easy enough, right? So you just build a new room, you put the stuff in there, and you're good to go. Well, that's not really the way it works. In this case, there's a lot of information that needs gathered on the back end. So some of that information would be very easy to get. Some of it is a little bit harder. So in some cases, we're going to look at, in this case, I'm going to look at, okay, I have X amount of hardware. Okay, how much power is it using? Well, I can go to each device and kind of look, and there are ways to find out what that device is pulling power-wise, which gives me a watts, or the amount of power that is being consumed. I can also have a circuit audit done at the breaker panel, a little further back, which will give like X is being pulled from these places and fed. So I know what the total is, and I know what individual pieces are doing. But the fun doesn't stop there, because then it needs to be, you need to find what the peak loads are. And in some cases, it's when a machine first turns on, it pulls almost full load and then drops back down. So you could be running in a place where if you were to lose power, when everything turns back on, it would fail to start because there wouldn't be enough available power for that initial power on. So all these things have to be considered. So not only do you have to go find the ratings of each device, you have to look at the running time, plus what you're actively pulling, and look at it spanned over a period of time to make a good decision on power. So after you've added all that up, you then take the watts and you convert it to BTU per hour. Now, there's a formula on the internet to tell you to do it, but you basically multiply your watts times like 3.5. Basically, it's 3.412, some long number, but it doesn't really matter. The idea is you get BTU per hour, and then you can take that, and then from there you can decide what you need to cool the room, which can lead into 1 ton of cooling. So a large air conditioner, they rate them in tons. 1 ton of cooling is equal to about 12,000 BTU. So then you can decide, okay, I have 5 tons worth of cooling that needs to happen. But it doesn't stop there, because again, it's not where you are now, but where you're going to be. So then you have to think of, how many servers am I projected to replace? Where are there networking gear that's going to go away? How can I, do we have uninterruptible power supplies that need to be inserted to maintain uptime during an outage? How do we figure all this out? And then once you get all those pieces together, you're not done, because now you still have to design the layout of the space. So where do I put the racks? Where do I put the gear? Do I pre-run all the cables? Do I know how many I'm going to need? So this would be information you'd pull out of growth plans and looking at more trends. So you go back to the servers and you look at, okay, how much space am I using, or how much CPU am I increasing year over year, or how much is this growing, so that I can plan that growth and then have the allotted spaces and the power to be there when I get there without having to rebuild all over again, because that's not sustainable, right? So one of the important lessons, getting back to communication, is having the outcome that you want together before you go talk to them. So having all this information is the first thing I have to do before I'd even go talk to people, because now I need to go talk to different department, finance, and go, hey, I need to spend a huge chunk of money to make this possible. And they're going to ask why. And if I tell them all the bits and bobs about power, this, that, they're going to glaze over and they're going to say no, right? But if I tell them, we will meet a point where we will no longer be able to provide our customers service, and we will not be profitable based on these things, then it becomes a conversation they can understand, and they go, oh, okay. And then we'll look at it over a period of time, and that'll get executed. Well, once it gets approved, the next step turns into building, right? So then I've got to engage contractors to do building, contractors to do networking, contractors to do power, contractors to do cooling, contractors to do fire suppression. There's all these little steps that get added in to the project to put something together. So now all these people need information, and they need different sets of information. So some of it I can reuse. So the power people, I've already done the power calculations. They're going to probably do some of their own due diligence to make sure I'm not wrong. But we will have those numbers compare, and I'll be able to feed it and expedite everything because they'll have a lot of the information they need to get these sort of things done. I think there's, so once we get to that step, then it's working with all the teams, and not everyone can do it at the same time. So then you have to plan out, okay, what's the order I can do things in, and then looking at that order as far as getting a official date of when you're going to be done, so that you can give the business, hey, we're going to be done here, and then we have to plan out second stage, which is the migration stage from there to there, because in most cases you can't just shut things off, carry them over, and plug them in. There has to be an actual migration of data, or it has to be done live so we don't interrupt business. So there's that planning, which again gets back into looking at the reports, digging through statistical variables of like, okay, what's the percentage of time that I have available to do this when I'm not writing or expanding, or when's the best window that I can execute something in based on how busy we are. Is it at night? Is it in the morning? Because there are times that are busy due to backups or busy due to other things that make it so that it's not really viable. So a lot of those pieces add together on what it takes to execute on a project. So pulling that information and keeping it concise and being able to give it to the people who need the information, I think is the most important part of what you do. Some of it is very thinking long term, like playing chess, right? It's not what you do next, it's what you do 10 steps down the road. Because if I do the thing based on just the base need, a year and a half from now, I have to go to them and ask them again for this huge sum of money to redo something else, right? Like, it's just not going to work. So it's going to look poorly on me, and it's going to look poorly on the business. So presenting your ideas in that scale often is the best way. And sometimes it's presenting three options, right? The option that's really the gold standard option, the option that you think they're probably going to take, and then you present the option that you hope they don't choose, but you could do if you really had to, right? Because the idea is giving people choices. It's the yes but of the industry, because there is a desire to want to say no to any question involving a large capital expense, and everything I generally do is a large capital expense. So in those things, that's what we think of. So do you have any other questions or anything else I can add? Is that good and beneficial?
I think something that might be interesting to hear that you have already mentioned is how much the presentation of the same data can vary until it gets dangerous, for instance, for assuring communication or understanding on the other party.
So that is it's a good point. So the data does change, and it's really up to the gatherer in some cases, right? Because the physical data itself isn't going to change. Like, X is using X amount of power. That's true. However, there's some calculations that have to be on peak load and movement, and the truth is, it's really up to the person who's doing some of it and their experience and knowledge. So things that becomes valuable is the experience that you've gained and the knowledge that you gain over time to know when to budget extra or less depending on the way things are going. But often the sets of data are distinct, because the finance people don't care about X. The fire protection people really only care about how big the space is and other things like that. And so they can create a solution for the not using water and other chemicals, right? And then the networking group really only cares about how much ingress and egress of network traffic is coming in and going out, or the times that they're going to happen. And then maybe the server people, they really only care about the server gear. So I've got to pull a subset of that. So it's gathering all the pieces together and then feeding the right ones to the people who need to make the decisions, because if you give them all the information, they'll sit on it and not make a decision because it's overwhelming.
This is great. Thank you very much.